Hey, bud, we got Brandon Turner on the line. What do you want to ask him?
What's one thing that completely shifted your mindset?
So a few years ago, the company Bigger Pockets sold to private equity, and they install a new board of directors, a chairman of the board, a gentleman named Mike. And Mike has been around the block for decades. I mean, business after business after business, one of the smartest business minds I've ever met. We're sitting down with Mike the first time I ever meet him at Bigger Pockets. We're telling Mike all these things that we have. And after like 20 minutes of that, of him being, generous to us and letting us ramble, he finally holds up his hand and he says, guys, stop telling me what you have and what you're going to do with it. Tell me what's possible and what you need to get there. And I don't know why I had never thought that way in my entire life, but it was just like mind blown. Like, this is what one of the things that transformed my entire, made Open Door Capital what it is today.
Welcome to the Diary and Apartment Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe with Four Oaks Capital. I'm very excited for today's show. I know I always say I'm very excited for the shows because I am, but if I had to rank my excitability level on this one, I think I'm 10 out of 10 here because we have two great people with us, Brandon Turner, who really needs no introduction, and Bud Evans. So that said, gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. Well, as tradition, we're going to start with our experienced investor first. So Brandon, please tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from and how you got into this real estate thing.
Sure, man. So by the way, it's funny that you mentioned you say you're excited every show I've ever done in my life. I'm always like, that's my favorite show I've ever done.
Yeah.
Like whether absolutely. I'm a guest or whether I'm a host, doesn't matter. It's always my favorite. So
yeah. Somebody asked me what my favorite show was the other day. And I'm like, well, there's this one, there's that one, there's this one. Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly.
They're all good.
Exactly. So
they're all good.
Anyway, yeah, they're good.
All right. Yeah. So how did I get into real estate? So I got into the small multifamily space. I bought a house and then I sold it. I made some money and I was like, this real estate thing could work. I was 21 years old. And then I bought a duplex. I lived in one half, rented the other half out. And I was like, this is awesome. Like I'm actually living for free. And I thought, well, if I'm making, a few $100 in just profit off of this thing, what if I had a bunch of them? And that was kind of like the initial, let's just get a bunch. And then I had this idea of if I can have 30 units, 30 rental units, and each one's making me $100 in profit, that's $3,000 a month. I would be so rich at $3,000 a month and I could retire. That was literally all my thought, right? When you're 21, $3,000 a month is crazy money. Mm-hmm. So I spent the next 6-7 years of my life building up a portfolio of 30 rental units, mostly those small, multifamily, duplex, triplex, fourplexes, some single family houses in there, did some flipping. And then by the time I was 27, I had my $3,000 a month and I said, okay, I'm done. I quit my job. Woo-hoo. Yeah, I was like, I'm done. And then I realized that there's not a lot you can do on $3,000 a month, especially with a family, So I jumped back in and bought a 24-unit apartment complex, and then later bought a 50-unit mobile home park. In that process, somewhere in there, I started the Bigger Pockets podcast alongside Josh Dorkin. And the last 2 years have just been a rocket ship where we've gone from, I went from roughly 100 units to just over 3,000 over the past 2 years. So it's been just a crazy shift in a kind of a hockey stick exponential growth.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd like to point out, and I mentioned this to you, and we met at the Michael Blanc conference a couple months ago, but that 24 unit, you wrote a book about that. And that book was absolutely pivotal in me jumping into apartments. I was doing a bunch of single family homes, and I think I paid 99 cents for it on Amazon. And anyway, that book just unlocked, the part of my mind that thought that multifamily was too difficult. So
that's funny. Well, thanks, man.
Very publicly, just like to thank you for writing that book because, I think I accidentally downloaded it too. It was one of those things where accidental download, I was trying to get a bunch of single family ones. And, but anyway, it's really the book that started my journey. But anyway, thanks for writing it. And thanks for everything you do.
What's funny about that is that wasn't meant to be a book. It was a blog post that I wrote. It ended up being 5,000 words. And I was like, that's the longest blog post I ever wrote. And I was like, well, what? And then I learned Amazon had this thing called Kindle miniatures or something like that. I don't know what they called it at the time. And so I was like, let's just put it there and see if anybody buys it. So anyway, I think thousands of people have bought it now for $1. So crazy.
Yeah. And in my situation, I was on a military deployment and, we had access to Wi-Fi once a month, if lucky. I was on a Navy ship somewhere in the middle of the ocean. And every time I had Wi-Fi, I would just download a ton of real estate books. And At the time, I was trying to increase the amount of single family homes and be able to scale my single family portfolio. But yeah, when I read that book, it was just like light went on. But
That's cool.
Anyway,
Love to hear it.
so when you started Bigger Pockets, what was your goal with that? Did you imagine it was going to be as big as it is now?
Yeah. So a little clarification. Like I started the podcast, but the actual website had lived probably 8 years before I even came around. In fact, I was I was actually an early member. So Bigger Pockets was just a forum. Josh Dorkin started it in his basement. We always joke, he started in his underwear in his basement, like just by himself, building like this little forum and a little blog talking about real estate. And I found it very early on. I remember you could even literally go back and look at my very first post where I'm like, hi, I'm brand new and I want to buy a property. And I found it. And what it represented to me at the time was like, shoot, there are answers to these questions. Like, like, oh, I don't have any money. Okay, I guess I can't invest. But it was like, oh, these are people talking about how to do it. So it was this mindset shift of like, oh, it's not, can I do it? It's how do I do it? And here's hundreds of people at the time, hundreds today, millions, but hundreds of people who are doing this thing. And so I just started like jumping into the website and asking questions and answering what I could. And then at some point I became friends with the guy who had started it, Josh Dorkin. And we're like, hey, let's start a podcast. And so that's where that came from. So in the beginning, like Josh just did it because he needed help with his own investments. And when I started the podcast, the reason I did it is because I was listening to other podcasts. And I remember thinking like, I feel so much like I know the people that I'm listening to. Like you feel like you know them when you listen to their podcast. And I was like, that is so beneficial to a real estate career to have lots of people know who you are and to trust you. And so we started the podcast for that reason. And it has been exactly that. Millions of people know, like, and trust me. And therefore we can raise money for real estate deals today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a phenomenal podcast. I mean, there's a reason it's the #1 podcast in the world for real estate right now. And it's just an amazing podcast. So it's one that I cut my teeth on. I think a lot of people, when they start talking, and incidentally, this is like going to be episode number 215 or something like that. Don't quote me on it. But when I ask people about how they got into the business, I think the two biggest things that come up, Bigger Pockets and, the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. Yeah. Those are by far the two biggest things that come up. Well, I found this Bigger Pockets thing. So
I love to hear it.
Yeah. The impact you've had has been absolutely amazing. So,
well, thanks, man.
But there you go. So let's talk about some of the deals you guys are doing right now, or some of the deals you've done. Pick your favorite. Tell us a story about one of those.
Sure. So why don't I start with, I'll start with a slight deviation from the multifamily, or at least a special niche of the multifamily, and that is the mobile home park. So I bought, I had these 50-ish units of my own of like small multi, and then I bought the 50-unit mobile home park. Now, why mobile home parks? I love multifamily, and mobile home parks are multifamily. They're just kind of an odd, ugly cousin of the multifamily space.
Faster step kid, maybe.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But, and somebody asked me, actually, Michael Blanc earlier today, I was talking with Michael Blanc, and he asked me, why did you choose multifamily? Why did you choose mobile home parks? And I said, I chose it because it fired me up. And this is not just a true principle to I think applies to anybody. Like everything works. If you look at real estate, pretty much everything works. You can go self-storage, you can go raw land, you can go apartments, single family, whatever. But something's going to appeal to you. Something's going to make you go, oh, I like that. Whenever I hear people talk about it, I like it. So whenever I talk to a new investor and they want to get into anything real estate related wise, I always tell them, listen to like a dozen or 2 dozen, 3 dozen, a million episodes of some real estate podcasts where they interview people. It doesn't have to be Bigger Pockets. It could be anybody's podcast. And you're going to hear things that stand out to you and that light this little flame inside your soul. And you're like, oh, I love that. I love that. Some people it's like crypto. I don't get crypto, but some people love crypto. It fires them up. Yeah. Some people love self-storage. Some people love whatever. For whatever weird reason in the universe, my fire was for mobile home parks. And so I leaned into it. Now there are logical reasons why I think they're beneficial, but I leaned into it. So I'll go through my first one. So I told once I decided I was going to go into mobile home parks, and this is just another thing. What you decide is more important. That you decide is more important than what you decide. So until I made that decision, I just floundered around for years. Finally, I made the decision. I'm going to do mobile home parks. I don't care if there's other things better. I'm just going to make a decision. And then I defined what I wanted. And I said, I want a 50-unit property, give or take, 50-ish units that has city sewer and water. Like, I don't want to deal with like septic tanks and wells and all that. I just want city sewer and water because it's simple and around 50 units. I figured I could probably afford that. And then I told everybody that I knew. I mentioned on the podcast, or I go to a real estate club or real estate events. I tell everybody I talk to, I want a 50-unit mobile home park with city sewer and water. If you know of any, please let me know. Mm-hmm. And I did that for 3-4 months. And finally, I was at a real estate meetup and I met a guy and I told him that. And 2 weeks later, he emails me and says, hey, I just got a lead across my desk. It's a 50-unit, exactly 50-unit mobile home park with city sewer and water. I thought you'd want to buy it. Now, this thing was 4,000 miles away from where I lived. At the time, I guess it was 2,000 miles away.
Now you're in Maui, right?
I'm in Maui now. So I was in the process of moving to Maui. I was in Washington State. This property was in Bangor, Maine, like as far away as you can get from Maui in the world, pretty much. And so anyway, this property comes up and I was like, yeah, I'd buy it, but I'm not doing it alone. I don't know anything about Bangor, but you have a lot of experience. This guy was named Ryan Murdoch. He's still one of my best friends in the world, actually moved out to Maui, lives here with me now on the same property. And Ryan and I bought the property together. We raised money from another partner who brought about a third of the money. I brought a third. Well, they bought almost half. I brought about a third, and then Ryan brought the rest. And we bought it together. We paid $1.1 million for it. We got seller financing on the deal, and we ended up selling it 2 years later for about 1.7. So we that was our first deal, and we learned a ton about what I don't like and what I do like. But the valuable lessons I guess I can pull out was number one, make a decision. Know what you're going to go after. It doesn't matter. Just make the decision and then define your criteria. What is it you're looking for? And then third, tell everybody you know that that's what you're going after. So decide, define, and then just broadcast it. And then like now, even if somebody doesn't bring you the deal, at least you're specific on what you want. You can go tell real estate agents, brokers, whatever. Tell them what you want, and then people will go and help you get that. They'll help you accomplish that goal. And then correct course along the way. We did the deal. Some stuff went well. Some stuff didn't. We had a bank robber. We had a prostitute who was also a thief who would lure men in and then steal money from them. So we had all sorts of fun stories, right?
Nice.
But and we learned what we liked. We learned that we didn't like that class of mobile home parks. It was just too much drama. So now today we buy nicer ones and we buy larger ones. We don't buy anything small like that. We only buy 100 units or greater. But I would not have known that had I not take that initial step to buy the first one and then correct course along the way.
Yeah, I love that story for a lot of reasons. I mean, I met you standing next to Ryan Murdoch, so obviously that's gone well for you. My understanding is you guys are business partners now with Open Door Capital, correct? Yeah. So, I mean, telling everybody what's going on, it leads to the relationship that, you tackle one deal together and now you're business partners and crushing the multifamily space. So anyway, hey, thanks for sharing that. I very much appreciate it. Yeah, so one question that I ask everybody, and I think it's core to, being successful, what is your big burning why or your motivation for doing what you do?
Yeah. So you ever remember the movie or the TV show DuckTales or like Scrooge McDuck and all them? Yep. Like he swam in a vault of gold coins. I just want that. I just want to swim in gold coins. And I don't know why this is so difficult to I'll tell you, my whys have changed a little bit, but they're also kind of the same. In the beginning, I had this this longing in my soul is the best way to say it, that like something was wrong with the world, right? Like going through high school and college, I'm like, this idea of like work a job for 40 years, your best years of your life, a job you don't like, and then the hour commute both ways just to push papers around or to move icons around a computer screen and to make just enough money to survive and then retire and die. I'm just like, there's something wrong with this, right? And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and I was like, oh, that's what's wrong with it, right? It put words to this groaning. So number one, I wanted something different. I think most people listening to the show have had that experience where they feel that, right? Secondly, like I love my parents. I love my dad and my mom. They're amazing people, but I watched my dad work so hard for so long. And as a result, didn't get to spend as much time with our family, right? He's working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, my entire childhood. And I remember even as a kid saying, there's got to be a better way, like where like the father can actually be involved or, like the parent that's working can be more involved. And I thought in order for me to be the best father possible to my future children, and I wanted to be a dad, I need a different path. And so real estate allowed that. So that was in the beginning and that continues to today. Like I do what I do heavily because of the kids. Now today I have financial freedom. I've got millions of dollars in net worth and whatever. And so today it's changed a little bit. Today I invest in real estate, one, because it's fun. I like it. It's fun. It's a good time. I like the fact that there's no top to the mountain, right? There's no like, I'm climbing some mountain trying to get more and more, but there is no top to it. So I can be perfectly satisfied in the climb. And I love that. The climb is the fun part. So it's fun to be able to challenge yourself and do big things and cool things. I'm perfectly happy where I am, but I also like the climb, and it's fun. And then finally, like, I love the idea of helping other people cross that bridge from like, there's got to be more to life than this, to I'm doing what I love and I'm doing it for a purpose. So I love that, like that education side of things.
Yeah, a lot of things there that resonate with me. I mean, I think the rich dad, poor dad concept. I mean, you talked about the 40-40-40 plan is how I've seen it described recently. The 40 years, 40 hours a week. Yeah. The rich dad, poor dad thing. It's something that changed my mindset a lot too. It's what got me purchasing single family homes. But I think there's a lot of goodness there. And, you know, my why has definitely morphed over the years as well. You know, 5-10 years ago, my why was, you know, be able to, you know, provide after the military career was over. Now it's something a little different, but I very much appreciate you for sharing that. Now, one question that I think you're a special expert at, and incidentally, Bud and I both share a retirement date from the military of October 31st. And we are first-time beard owners. Any beard growing tips that you can give us?
Oh man, just accept the homeless look. It's gonna like it's just gonna look homeless until it straightens down and then looks a little more presentable. But it's a process. Look. Yeah. So I have a theory about beards. I'll tell you. So generally speaking, most studies today show that women find men with beards a little bit more attractive. Now, why is that? Here's why I think so. I think beards show commitment, right? It shows commitment to something for a long time, because it takes a long time. Yeah. So the fact that you guys, both gentlemen, are good looking guys with beards now shows that you can stick with something hard for a long time. So there you go. Look at you.
You know, I was thinking the other day that, you know, if you don't like your jawline as a male, you know, all you got to do is grow a beard and shape your beard. You know, if you got like a weak chin, grow a beard, you know.
I got the weak. I look like a 13-year-old girl without the chin, without the beard. Yeah, I'm a 13-year-old girl. It's great.
Well, I'll go. We won't tell anybody about that. So, but there we go. So, one last question before we bring Bud on. What's next for you?
A couple of big things. I mean, one, we've gotten heavier into the apartment complex space. So we bought a $71 million. Well, we're closed on a $71 million property right now that we syndicated. We bought a $57 million one about a month ago, and then a $34 million portfolio earlier in the year, all like the larger multi. So we want to get more and more into that. I like the multifamily. Mobile home parks fire me up still. I don't want to get that away. But mobile home parks cap out at about 100 million a year. Like, I don't think we could literally buy more than about 100 million a year. There's just not enough of them for sale at any given point. I think we're about as maxed out as we can get there. And then personally, you know, I've been doing the Bigger Pockets podcast for 9 years now. We're going on 10 years. So finally, I'm going to take a break from podcasting. So I'm actually stepping back from the podcast. We're bringing in a bunch of new hosts. And so the Bigger Pockets podcast is shifting, and I'm going to just go and focus on the Open Door Capital for a while and make sure that things, I mean, it's just going so good, but I want to focus on that. And then I want to focus on, I got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I'm going to spend some more time surfing and playing with them. So the next year, I'm going to try to take it. I don't want to call it a sabbatical. It might be a little bit too specific, because I'm not going to not work, but I definitely want to take it easy for a year.
Nice. And 2 and 5, great ages. I mean,
it's so fun.
The 2-year-olds are just the cutest things in the world when they're not crying. You know, they say terrible twos for a reason, but we're weaning them right now, and it's just like, at night. It's fun. We had a good night. So my oldest is 22. My youngest is 6. And I said this for a long time. The sweet spot for kids is about 5 to 12, you know, where the kids still like you. But they're old enough to, for the most part, take care of themselves. There's no diapers. There's, you know, they wipe their own butts. They get their own food. I mean, you got one rolling into the sweet spot right now.
Yes, so. It's so fun. It's so fun.
Yeah. I'm excited for you. Congratulations on that. So, well, that said, we're going to shift gears a little bit and bring, you know, my good friend Bud on the line. So Bud, welcome.
Hey, thanks guys. Brandon, this is a true, like dream come true. And
thanks, Bud.
So I listened to Bigger Pockets forever.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Not forever, for the last several years.
For the last 9 or 10 years. No, no big deal.
Yeah, right.
But
Oh, well, thanks.
yeah. Well, Bud, do us a favor and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a retired police officer and I'm retired active duty military. My timeline goes active duty Air Force, 1993, became a cop, went into the Guard. They hit the towers in 2001, 2004. I had been deployed twice, so I went back on active duty and I've stayed there since. I was enlisted for a total of 19 years, commissioned for 15, just retired October 31st with
Congrats.
Brian. So I over the course of time, I did training programs, project management processes, stood up 4 different units for the military, helped with strategic planning and things like that. Also played and coached ice hockey for the majority of my life, coached for about 20 years. Yeah, at various levels. So that was great. Been married for 31 years to my wife. She went through the Air Force with me. She went through the law enforcement world and then came back and stayed with me as I joined the military again. So, and we have one son who's 29 and he's a respiratory ICU nurse at Temple University Hospital. So
Awesome.
how did I get into real estate? I'll tell you, I moved into Cinnaminson, New Jersey, and I kind of wanted to make some changes. I wanted to leave things better than the way I found them. So I ran for office and I became the mayor of Cinnaminson, New Jersey. Got involved in economic development, found out I really loved it. Then I got a promotion at work. They brought me in, made me a major, put me in charge of the intelligence section, and I wasn't allowed to be in office anymore. So I had to resign. And then I picked up Rich Dad, Poor Dad and realized that I didn't know anything. 5 degrees, finance, master's and bachelor's administration. I had no idea what I was talking about when I was talking about money. And then, I actually picked up your book, How to Invest in Real Estate with Low or No Money Down.
Oh, thanks.
And at that point, I was like, yeah, I know where I'm going with this. I had an idea which way I wanted to go, but that really kind of, that sent me. So I am an investor. I invest in single family properties. I'm also a licensed agent. Over the last 3 years, I've done 10 wholesales, 30 flips, and I've got 21 properties between New Jersey and Pittsburgh. And I just got picked up. I'm a real estate investment coach for Homeschooled by Tarek.
Very cool.
I'm jumping into the commercial multifamily market right now and just picked up my first 6 unit. And we're in the process of doing renovations right now. So I'm looking in obviously Pittsburgh and New Jersey where I live, and then trying to look at Carolinas and Georgia.
Yeah, great markets. Great markets.
You're killing it. And Tarek, he's a good buddy of mine. I love that guy. So that's super cool. You're with him.
Yeah. So Bud, one question for you. What's your big burning why?
I would have told you that it was my wife and son initially, but that has morphed, and it became as I got closer and closer to retirement, it became more about time than it was, and how to use it, as opposed to just being with them after I got done work. It turned into, how can I generate more time to do more things, to have more fun and more experiences with them outside of dad's in the military.
Nice. Well, here we come to my favorite part of every podcast episode, where I can say something like, hey, Bud, we got Brandon Turner on the line. What do you want to ask him?
Yeah, man, I got 4 questions that are like burning in my mind because, so I just, I shut down my wholesaling and flipping, went back and tried to restart it and concentrated on my rental properties. But let's start with, what's one thing that completely shifted your mindset? We already talked about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but was there another one thing?
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you this one. So a few years ago, Bigger Pockets sold. The company Bigger Pockets sold to private equity. They brought in, at least part of Bigger Pockets. Josh sold part of Bigger Pockets. So anyway, private equity comes in and they install a new board of directors. A chairman of the board is this gentleman named Mike, and Mike is been around the block for decades. I mean, business after business after business, one of the smartest business minds I've ever met. So Mike is chairman of the board, and we're sitting down with Mike the first time I ever meet him. And at Bigger Pockets, we're telling Mike all these things that we have. Like, we've got 3 developers and we can do this with it. And this is what our plan is. And then we've got this much cash. So we're going to invest in this thing. And we're going to be, we got this team. So we're going to do this. And after like 20 minutes of that, of him being, generous to us and letting us ramble, he finally holds up his hand and he says, guys, stop telling me what you have and what you're going to do with it. Tell me what's possible, and what you need to get there. And I don't know why I had never thought that way in my entire life, but it was just like mind blown. Like, wait, so if what's possible, we could be $1 billion company. We could do like, right. So then I was like, well, how do I apply this to my real estate? And I was like, this is like one of the things that transformed my entire, like made Open Door Capital what it is today. I go like in my entire shift from small deals to big deals. So I'm like, wait, what is possible? Well, $50 million of real estate in 3 years, that's possible. What do I need to get there? Well, I would need a full-time like acquisitions, like somebody to analyze deals, an underwriter, acquisitions person. I would need a investor relations person. I would probably need an assistant. I'd probably need like a COO to kind of run the whole thing, and maybe a finance guy just to help do all the numbers. And I'm like, okay, so if I had that, could I buy $50 million in 3 years? I think I could. So then it took me about 4 months. I found all those guys and that team. And then now since that time, that 3-year period from when I set that goal ends December 31st, 2021 here from the time we're recording this, 6 weeks away. Yeah. The goal was $50 million of real estate and 1,000 units. By that point, we will cross $300 million of real estate and 3,500 units. So we completely blew that goal away because I didn't look at my circumstances and say, what can I do with it? I looked at what was potential, what was possible. And then I just backed it up with the right team. And that mindset shift changed everything for me. It's how I approach every business now. I try not to think, what do I have and what can I do? It's what's possible and who's going to get me there.
Love it. Love it.
All right. Then the next question, the follow-up there would be, what tools do you use to keep yourself on track?
Good questions. So as a team, Open Door Capital, we use a program called Asana. Is for one thing, that's such a project management tool. So Asana is what we use to track our goals. We write them down in there, track like our leads coming in and all that. So Asana is kind of our project management tool. We use a system called EOS from the book Traction by Gino Wickman. So when I say like a system, it's like, this is the way we operate our business. This is the operating system, the entrepreneur operating system, EOS. We are fanatics about EOS. Like we are very rigid and very strict with it. Every quarter we've got a meeting that lines up like our quarterly goals, align up with our annual goal, which lines up with our 3-year goal, which lines up with our 10-year goal. And all that boils down to what we're doing every single week. And we all have goals aligned. And we have a team and we have culture and we have all that stuff. And that's all part of EOS. So EOS is a system we operate under. We use Asana to keep track of everything. And we use a little bit of Google, Google Suite. So like the Google Sheets and all that, and Google, all that, and Slack for communication. So I don't know if that helps, but it's kind of how we run our life.
Yeah, that's awesome. In fact, I'm using Asana and Slack right now to communicate with virtual assistants that I picked up. Yeah, so that's great. Thank you. So I've got a couple, they're kind of tied together. So the first one is, if someone were to drop you off and give you $0 in a certain place, where would you start?
Yeah, I'd probably go and find the person. I'd go talk to real estate agents and find out who's doing all the deals in that area, right? So I find out who's the players, right? Then I'd go to those players and ask them what they wanted. What are they looking for right now? And then I would go out and do everything in my power to find that thing for them. I would, like, if it was a flipper, let's say I want to get in the flipping, I'd go find out who's the biggest flipper around. And then I would just go like, okay, well, what are you looking for right now? You're looking for houses under what price range? Okay, that like that. Okay, I'm going to go door knock until I find that property for. I'm going to bring it to you and I'm going to gift wrap it in a bow and I'm going to give it to you, asking nothing in return. That's how it would start. Because once I do that one time, I'm now in that person's inner circle and they're going to love me forever. And they're going to help me get more than $0 and they're going to take me to the next level. So that's what I do. Network.
Awesome. And so the last thing, the one thing that kind of hit me when I restarted was, if there's one thing that you did that you could change, what would it be?
So there's always the whole, like, if I change anything, then I wouldn't be who I am today, so I wouldn't change anything kind of mentality. But taking that out of the equation, I could have gone bigger, faster. See, I lived in my comfort zone for way too long. Like I lived in this, like, I feel good buying duplexes and triplexes. I feel good flipping 2 houses a year. I buying an apartment, that's way too big. That's way too advanced. You have to be way richer and smarter and better for that. And I lived in this belief that I had to stick small for too long. Had I had better self-esteem, I could have gotten bigger faster. And it took getting a performance coach. Like I have a performance coach I meet with every other week. And it took getting into like a group of high achievers. I'm in a group called GoBundance. Getting in GoBundance and having a performance coach and then hanging around with more people who are doing big deals. All of a sudden I realized big deals weren't any harder than little deals. It was all a mindset thing. And I just had not enough confidence. So that's what I'd probably change is I tell myself, you can do a lot more than you think you're capable of.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Hey, but you said that was your last question. You got anything else? Because I've got plenty that I can throw in right now.
Oh man, I'm sitting here talking to Brandon Turner. I could go on for days. I just got done listening to 3 podcasts in a row about creative financing you guys were putting on, and just fantastic stuff. And honestly, like I'm trying to wrap my head around it right now, the whole PACE method. So have you used it? And if so, what kind of deals were you pulling out of that?
Yeah. So, Pace Morby does a lot of these subject to deals, and I've never done subject to. I shouldn't say that. I did it once. I've never been a big subject to guy until I interviewed Pace, and like I learned what he was doing. I was like, oh, like what it was in my head. I have these preconceived notions of like subject to sounds good, but it's risky and it doesn't work because of X, Y, Z. Like the due on sale clause and all this stuff, right? And then talking to him, like I realized there were answers to all that. And then what occurred to me was it's the same thing I just said. It was a mindset thing. I didn't do subject to because I had a mindset that said I couldn't do that. Where Pace was like, no, I'm going to figure it out. And he figured it out. I'm still learning these lessons even today. I mean, that was like 2 weeks ago. I recorded that episode with him where I was like, oh man, I've been wrong all along. That said, I love creative finance. I mean, I love doing no and low money down deals, right? I wrote a book on it. So, I've done a lot of lease options. I do a ton of partnerships and private lending. I love that stuff. Hard money lending has been a big thing. And now today syndication. So I buy $300 million worth of real estate using almost no money of my own because I can raise it from other people. So I love creative finance, but yeah, I have not done much of what Pace does subject to, though. If I was getting started over again, I'd definitely look into that.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was considering. I mentioned earlier, reading your book while in deployment. I had 2 big ideas coming off that deployment. One of them was subject to, one of them was multifamily. And, I did a lot of research into both. I agree. I think for somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, if the market's right and where they live is, the dynamics work out, the subject to is a very powerful tool. Yeah. So now I follow-up question on that one, as you've evolved from, one way of doing things or one niche to another, what were the biggest drivers in those changes?
Yeah, almost every massive change is, I call those pivot moments, like pivot years or pivot moments, because like your life pivots a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So they're usually predicated by a conference, like a real estate conference or like a mastermind, almost always. Like when I got into the larger multifamily, I had went to when I chose like to really go big on that, it was around the exact same time as that whole story I told you about the chairman of Bigger Pockets earlier. Yeah. I went to a conference. It was Joe Fairless's best ever conference. It was in Denver. And I went to that and everybody there was just doing these massive deals. And I left just inspired and to make a big change. And then another time I went to the GoBundance event. I went to one of their conferences, made some big changes. And those big pivot moments tend to occur when I get around people doing way bigger things than myself. So that's why I try to continually put myself in conferences and events. That's why I go speak at them, but I also just go as an attendee because when I'm around those people, that's when I change. Even going to Michael's event, the one I met you at, that changed my business a little bit. Like it shifted the way I thought about things in a lot of ways. And that's, I have never wasted a dime going to a real estate, like a conference or an event or a mastermind, because it's never wasted. It's always an investment.
Yeah. I think my first big event that I went to was a Michael Blanc conference. It was 2018. So, 3 years ago. I had the same kind of mind-blowing, mind-opening, experience. I was looking at buying a 5-plex or an 8-plex. And I remember a guy, retired Air Force guy, put his hand on my shoulder. He's like, you don't need to do this 5-plex. He's like, let me show you how to get something big done. And it was one of those moments where, you meet the right people and you talk about doing bigger, or you listen to them talk about doing bigger deals. And all of a sudden it's just like, wow, you know what? That doesn't sound so hard. The same thing that went through my mind when I read that book of yours, wow, 24 units, I can do that, so very much appreciate that.
It does show that so much mindset behind it all is. Like I had a buddy who flipped 100 houses his first year. And I'm like, that's insane. Who flips 100 houses their first year? And I asked him that, like, how did you even do that? And he said, well, all my friends were flipping 100 houses a year. So I didn't know that's not the way it was supposed to be done. Like, and I love that. Like he didn't even know that's not normal. Like he started at that level, and that's just the way he operated. Where I started at a level where I was just buying single family houses, because here's the truth. Like, yeah, our reality is shaped by the people we associate with. And it's really hard, especially mentors. Like it's really, whoever you look up to, it's really hard to outpace your mentors. Like you're not going to rise to a mental level or a mindset level higher than your mentor. So, if you surround yourself with people who are doing 3 flips a year, that's about the level you're going to tap out on.
Yeah.
But if you want to raise your level in life, get around some different mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I think when I look at, the things that I've done in the past, I started buying single family homes. And at the time, my biggest block was I can only do this once every couple of years. I can't afford to do it more. I can't do more. And it was a huge mind block. And once you get past that mind hurdle, and, once upon a time, I had this idea that if I just, knew a little bit more about things, it'd be a lot easier. Yeah. And I realized what you said, that when you meet somebody, that unlocks a lot more than, reading a book or listening to a podcast. It's just, you meet somebody who's doing it, and boom, light goes on.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's so true.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, one question, since we are on a podcast and you've got the best podcast in the world, best real estate podcast in the world, I think there's 1 or 2 that probably have more listeners than you. So
probably more than 1 or 2, but yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, 1 or 2 that I've heard of that have more than you. So there's only 1 or 2 that exist. But tips for growing audiences, what did you do starting out differently that you think helped you to get to where, get to the #1 ranked podcast in the world? Real estate podcast.
Yeah, that's a good question. A couple things that I've learned, I guess, about just building a brand in general, or just like a platform, like to have people like know who you are, which makes raising money much much easier. The first thing is consistency. Obviously, like we've released an episode every week, every Thursday for 9 years, 9.5, almost 10 years now. Every single Thursday, never missed a date, no matter what. And that was a requirement. So the consistency helped, but consistency is only half the picture. The other half is the improvement. So every episode, even to today, 10 years in now, we look back every time we end an episode, we sit there and we complain about what went wrong. And I don't mean that in a bad way. We just go, okay, next time, let's do this differently. I didn't like the way that this happened. And we self-reflect every single time, and we say, how do we do it better? And there's this constant need. How do I get better video, better audio, better questions, better guests, better everything, better systems? And this constant striving for that has helped a lot. And then people like persons, like people like people, right? People like people. And so I make it a point to be personal, and I call it being intentionally authentic. So like there's one thing being authentic, and then there's making a point to be authentic, which in itself feels kind of unauthentic, like non-authentic, authentic, right? Yeah. Because I'll give you an example. Like over the past month, I gained 15 pounds on vacation. I went on vacation for a month. I gained 15 pounds. Like my shorts don't fit very well anymore. And I feel really stupid that I'm like gaining all this weight. I mention that right now because I'm being intentionally authentic. It's not a fake thing. I didn't make it up, but I'm being intentional about saying it because people then are like, oh yeah, I can identify with that. I've been on long vacations and gained a bunch of weight. I understand Brandon's like not depression, but like getting down on myself over that. And so like that's tight pants. Yeah, I can get that. So I'm being a person. Like I'm not just standing up here telling me all the good things in my life, but I'm letting people relate with me, and I'm talking about my family and what I'm doing on the weekend. So bringing personality into your platform is a good way to get people to really know, like, and trust you. I had a guy recently tell me the reason he invested in Open Door Capital is because of how I talk about my wife. And that was I'm not trying to pat myself on the back for like, my talking about my wife, but people like to do business with people they like. And so you have to show them who you are, and then they want to do business with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, something about you that really impressed me, and, not, all hail Brandon or anything, but,
come on, keep it going.
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's just do it. But, at the Michael Blanc conference, we were standing around in a group, and we'd probably been sitting there for 15, 20 minutes, just talking, conversation had gone, and somebody walks by, and I remember you saying, I have not met that person yet. And you said, excuse me. And you walked off to meet that person. I was just like, wow, that is impressive. I mean, the fact that you went out of your way just to meet somebody that you haven't met before, I thought that was awesome. I
Well, thanks,
definitely, learned a lot just from watching you there. But I think you've got the authenticity thing nailed. So
thanks, man. I've been to a lot of, like, back when I was especially first getting into this stuff, like the internet marketing stuff, I'd go to like internet marketing conferences, like podcast conferences, and I'd see these people that I look up to a ton, like that I listen to their show or whatever. And I would just sit there going, I'm just too scared to go talk to them. And I would never talk to them. And I remember at the time wishing that those people would just come say hi to me, because I was too scared to go talk to them. And so today, now I'm at a conference, I'm like, oh, some people probably view me that way. Like they're just too scared or nervous, or maybe this, like, they don't want to bother me or whatever. But I'm like, if I can go out there and do it, then it just kind of takes that. And then they're paying thousands of dollars to attend an event. Like why not make it an amazing event for them as much as possible? So anyway, well, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Well, I noticed, and I mean, your beard, is very recognizable. So,
and the awkward tallness. Yeah. The awkward tallness.
Tall. Yeah,
awkward
absolutely. Tall. Well, we're about out of time, but do you have any other questions before we close up?
Is there a way that you track the people that you meet?
Yeah.
Not really. I'm pretty terrible at it. And because of that, I will meet people and be like, hey, nice to meet you. And they're like, oh, actually we met last year. I'm like, oh, so stupid. Sorry. So yeah, even like the other day I'm at the airport and we're all wearing masks, right? Because you have to wear masks at the airport. And this guy is like, he's like, Brandon Turner. And I was like, and I just turned, I'm assuming it was some like random podcast. I'm like, hey, nice to meet you. And he's like, dude, it's Fred. And I'm like, oh geez, like he's like a friend of mine that we've known each other for several years. He's a big hard money lender. And I'm like, I had no idea. So anyway, I fall into those all the time. I'm like, yeah.
Well, if you do the 506Cs, and you have a platform, you don't need to remember people, right? No, exactly. I'm teasing, but not true categorically. But
I'm reminded of a great quote from I think it was who's there? Mark Twain, right? He said always tell the truth, because then you don't have to remember anything. And I've always loved that. Like, you don't have to remember anything. So just always tell the truth, and then you're fine. So
which lie did I tell that person?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So
yeah.
Cool. Well, we are about out of time, and Brandon, Bud, thank you both for coming on the podcast today. One final question for each of you. Brandon, go first. How can listeners learn more about you?
You can follow me if you want to watch my dancing over on TikTok. I'm just kidding. I don't dance, but Instagram, TikTok, I'm Beardy Brandon. Right. No dancing. No dancing.
All right. And Bud, same question for you. How can listeners learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Howard Bud Evans, MBA on LinkedIn, if you want to connect that way too.
All right. Awesome. And we'll put links to both their profiles in the show notes for anybody who's listening. And, once again, gentlemen, thank you very much. I very much appreciate your time today.
Hey, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.